content of all episodes of this podcast channel has been created by a senior mental health practitioner and researcher who is a high-functioning autistic person and survivor of complex trauma.
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Forooshani and this is the second episode of our podcast about dissociative identity neurotype. If you have not checked the first episode of this series, you can check it first through the link provided in the description. In the first episode, we briefly talked about what is dissociative identity neurotype. In this episode, we talk about some developmental features of this type of neurodiversity. One of the most common mistaken beliefs is that dissociative identity is a very rare condition, while this is not true at all. Imagine that if your workplace or your classroom includes 150 co-workers or students, even in such a small community, you are likely to have at least one or two individuals who have the official diagnosis of dissociative identity neurotype. This is 4 to 5 times more common than the prevalence of schizophrenia. The real statistics are estimated to be even higher than this because dissociative identity neurotype is very likely to be underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed, and also people with official diagnoses usually do not share their mental condition in their social life because of their fear of extreme stigmas. Finally, as we said in the first episode, dissociative identity neurotype is caused by extreme traumatic experiences in early childhood. So, when such traumatic experiences are not very rare, this mental condition also is not that rare. It's just hidden and unknown to the public. As dissociative identity neurotype starts to develop in early childhood, each alternate identity can grow their own unique self-image regardless of the characteristics of the body. That means that for each alternate identity, their perception of their age, physical appearance, and even their gender can be inconsistent with the biological body. However, it is important to remember that despite the unusual way of perceiving their identity, individuals who live with multiple identities are usually in touch with reality. Their perceptions of having multiple identities is a genuine perception which has a scientific explanation. Every human being is born with multiple unintegrated selves. Each of them is responsible for certain types of cognitive and emotional functions. For example, we have a self for dealing with physical needs, another self for exploring and learning, etc., etc. An appropriate caregiving environment, like having a minimum level of predictability and safety, can lead all these separate states of mind to be connected to each other and finally integrate into one unified identity before the age of 7. After that, this unified identity can grow and develop during adolescence and can be established as our final shape of identity in late adolescence or early adulthood. However, experiencing extreme traumatic circumstances in early childhood can interrupt this process of identity integration, and therefore, the multiple states of self that we have in early childhood can continue to grow separately without shaping a central identity. At the beginning, these separate states of self are simple and unidimensional, but through the next developmental stages like adolescence and early adulthood, they may develop their own distinct cognitions, emotions, attitudes, memories, likes, and dislikes. In this case, multiple identities instead of one unified identity are shaped and run the mental system of the person. These dissociated identities that can be completely different from each other are usually referred as alternate identity or alternate personality or alter. A good metaphor to understand this scientific explanation is the metaphor of orange segments. Imagine that if we consider our multiple states of mind in early childhood like the segments of an orange, our unified identity that is shaped around the age of 7 is like a grown orange, when all the segments are completely connected to each other. However, when your brain develops dissociative identities before the age of 7, it is like the orange segments in our metaphor never get connected to each other, but instead, each of them grows separately and will become a separate orange. In this case, instead of having one orange, you will have multiple oranges. They are all still oranges, but they have been originally rooted from the segments of one original orange. So, similarly, each alter is a full identity, like the main identity we all have and runs our psychological systems. If we make an analogy between our psychological system and a car, our identity is like the driver of this car. So when you have multiple identities instead of one, it is like having multiple drivers in a car. When you have multiple drivers in a car, not all of them can drive the car at the same time, but they can drive the car in turn and switch seats regularly. The functions of alters in running psychological functions is also similar to that. Like people who are sitting in the same car, alters are also identities that exist in the same brain. But like the metaphor of driving the car, at each given time, only one identity can drive our psychological system. And different identities can switch and take this role in turn when it is functional for the psychological system. During the next episode, we will discuss how we can be supportive and inclusive towards someone who is living with dissociative identity neurotype.